Hi guys, welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. It's me, Steve Hall, and on the other end, Pascal Floor, repping our enemies,
Oh, that's
Renaissance
true.
periodization.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry
They've
for
been
this.
taking some heat recently.
Did they?
To be fair, maybe there'll probably be some listeners who have seen the video, and I think it was potentially more like clickbaity by Dave McConey. He had Coach Cassim on and our man GVS, and they were like, I think the thumbnail was like, I don't know, so like GVS having a go at RP and Mike Israel, basically.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know what the video was about, but I can see. So, just from my perspective, I'm personally not someone who is very much interested in that entertainment fitness kind of stuff. And of course, RP has shifted more so towards that, at least their YouTube channel. And I totally understand it. Right? It's much more lucrative from a business perspective. Also, than critiquing and judging, like, I don't know, workouts and programs of famous people. It's way more lucrative to do it this way rather than anything else. So, but it doesn't really, well, it's not for me. So this is something that I don't really like. But of course, RP doesn't really do content for me. They are doing content for the broader audience. And this is something that you then have to detach yourself from, that the information that they are delivering and have delivered in the past is still solid. Most of the time, right? Can be that, of course, there are certain things that you disagree with, right? But most of the time. And then the rest, I think that you have to detach yourself from that. Either you like it and enjoy it or not. It's kind of like when a specific band is becoming more and more well-known and famous. And you're the person who still insists on like, I knew them from the get-go and they were so much more original back then. I hate their new music. It's too commercial. What are bands supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
Are they always supposed to just play for a small audience? No, they are most of the time interested to make a living off of that, be maybe even successful with what it is that they are doing, right? And playing for a broader audience. And it's kind of the same there as well. Don't complain about that you don't like what they are doing anymore, in my opinion. And this is not in regards to Dave McConey, because I have no idea what they've talked about, right? But it's just in general when people are seeing someone getting a greater audience, more attention with something that they may not dislike.
Yeah, I think
may dislike, sorry.
Yeah, I agree. It's with RP, obviously, the content they've gone down is that broader appeal, and I mean, it works, right? So you can't really talk against that, but that isn't, and people have critiqued RP for that and Mike for that, for like this. Again, he's in our space, he came up for being very evidence-based, very scientifically driven, and very like talking about nuances and very fine details and kind of minutia a lot of the time, but stuff we really enjoy. Whereas this is much broader, like basics of like, hey, his technique is not controlled. It's not deep ranges of motion. That exercise isn't great. It's like basic stuff to us, but that gets the broader appeal. That's what's going to help RP grow. And ultimately that could help the scientific, I mean, I think it has for sure helped the evidence-based space grow as well. So it's easy to kind of be against that, but it's like, that could actually be, it's definitely overall good for the industry. Absolutely no doubt about it.
100%. I think it's also the same when it comes to using clickbaity titles and clickbaity thumbnails. Either you accept that this is just the game and you play it, and then it's kind of like, I think that you've even talked about it at some point, Steve, where you are trying to do a form of jab, jab, jab punch, of like always doing those clickbaity things, following the algorithm, and then sometime really bring out something that is very much educational and really represents what it is that you really want to put out. But the other things are more so there to draw in the attention. And it's also kind of the same thing that you've brought up as an example with certain individuals who have very questionable methodologies of building a business, building an audience. And then after a while, once they have built that audience, going down a different direction. Because now they can afford it because they have that audience that is kind of quite loyal as well to them.
Yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, the video with Dave and GVS and Cassim was more on technique, which we spoke about before, where it was like that technique cyborg of the week, and it just being questionable whether or not that was something to be promoted in the way that has been promoted. But yeah, we've already discussed that. So people can check out Dave's podcast if they want to check out that discussion. I'm sure they already have, because I think a lot of the good people that listen to this and a lot of our YouTube audience, at least, watch a lot of what GVS is doing, which is cool.
Yeah. And sorry, guys, we still haven't gotten what is it called again?
Alex Leonidas.
Destiny, exactly. Him on the podcast.
I reached out to him again.
Yeah. See?
In his Instagram DMs, I sent him a message. So I might have to get in touch with Dave, see if Dave can give me a bit of an in. But I've got his email and I have talked to him on Instagram. So it was just he's just a busy guy.
See, I mean, you did your due diligence. Now it's not entirely up to you anymore.
But I actually want him on because I'm interested to talk about his prep, because I think he had quite a unique experience there. And again, our audience really have been following along his journey a long time. So I think it will be great to kind of dig into that a little bit. So we'll just have to see. Maybe actually our audience can go and message on his post and be like, hey, Steve DM'd you. Come on.
I was just thinking the same thing. But I always find this then to be quite desperate. It's kind of like when it comes to Twitter, for example, right? And you are, I don't know, in the investment field, and you are watching a post of someone who is posting about something, then you go into the comment section and it's full of people promoting their kind of investments and their shit. And so the intention behind it is kind of like dick pics, sending a girl dick pics. Do you really think that the girl is then interested in you even more so after you've sent the dick pics? No, probably they are really put off by it. And it's kind of the same when it comes to those kind of comments. When someone is then actually putting into the comment section, Steve Hall, right? He's more put off by the thought of then reaching out to you than actually incentivized of doing that.
Yeah. The good news is he did say he would come on. So I've already got the interest, so it isn't like I'm badgering him, just like,
who
come
did
on,
you
guy.
Hear from?
He did come back to me and said he'd come on.
Sorry.
So I've already had an interaction with him. He gave me his email, so we're in touch. It's just I imagine my email went into spam, which is sometimes the problem.
maybe he flagged you as spam, like, oh yeah, sure, I'm coming on, and then spam, and then it always goes into the spam folder from now on.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. So, but I don't know. I was talking about your T-shirt. That's what it was. I was like, how did I get to the topic of RP and then going down the route of talking about Dave? So
I mean, this is how good conversations go, right? You jump from one thing to the other. You never really finish one thought and one topic. You just like flip-flop around, right? Because that's just how good dynamic conversations go.
I have a question for you now, Pascal. Do you think my face is already looking slimmer?
And maybe it's the new haircut. I don't know.
I was going to say it could be the haircut and also the beard trim.
Yeah,
but I was looking at myself. I was like, I feel like my face is already like got quite a bit slimmer in this diet. But it's also interesting. There's nowhere held this level of facial slimness at this body weight before. It's strange how that evolves over time. Like how your face becomes a bit leaner.
The thing is, though, the older you get, right, the less body fat you're carrying in your face, especially around the cheeks. This is something that you commonly see amongst females. And this is also why a lot of females who get surgery done in their early stages of life, so maybe in their 20s or so, and they get the fat removed around the cheeks. Once they're growing older, they automatically lose even more around this, which makes them appear much, much older than they actually are. And once they are then actually in their 40s or so, they really look old just because of this, because
they put it back.
Removing the fat is always easy, but getting the fat back is next to impossible. You can do this, but it's very, very dangerous. Very dangerous. This is also why Brazilian butt lift is so lethal most of the time, because once you inject fat into your arteries or so, right, you're basically dying most of the time.
Damn. Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know that. But I always noticed when people are maturer, especially males, I notice it more on being a man. Like I've just noticed my face has got a little bit more like manly over time.
Yeah, mine too. Which is something that I do enjoy, to be honest. Yeah. This is also why, and this sounds, of course, super vain. This is why I do enjoy looking at my wedding pics. because I was very nice and chiseled, and my jawline was very much present, and also with the moustache and all that kind of stuff. I very much, this is kind of peak Pascal, right? And from there on, it's downwards. I can tell that it's never getting any better than this.
If you're gonna peak, your wedding day is a pretty good time to peak,
right?
So yeah, that's where was I don't even know. That was just my random question of, is my face looking slimmer? And yeah, it could definitely be haircut related.
Yeah, because I would assume that you went to the barber here on the weekend, or maybe at the end of last week.
Sunday, so quite literally a couple of days ago. Because we have actually our Revive get together next Saturday, and I was like, I definitely want to get my hair cut before we do that, because I reckon there's going to be some photos. And
I'm sorry that I can't really participate, but I am kind of it's kind of like the week. Yeah, next week I'm back in Vienna once again for a tattoo session, and then the 2 weeks after that, I'm once again in Vienna, and it's just too much traveling. I really can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you'll be in Vienna, so on Saturday, are you there? You might be back on Saturday, I guess, but
I'm back. I'm back Friday night then once again, and
but this one was a little bit impromptu. It was like a couple of clients came up to me and were like, we want to do another Revive get together, and I'm like, right, I'll make sure this happens.
Sure,
but it's pretty informal, and so if this one, I think it will all go smoothly. We can do these more regularly. We've already got, looks like there's going to be a group of 10 of us at least, so it's pretty decent.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I'm quite happy about that. And if I can give a bit more notice to people or do them more frequently, then yeah, it catches a bit more clientele.
The thing is, they don't need to be big anyway. You can do those smaller kind of get-togethers, even if it's just like with 4 or 5 other people, you know? If it's a little bit more of a spontaneous thing, but more frequent, I think it's still very much appreciated.
Yeah, so we're going to go for the listeners. Actually, they might. Hey, we could invite if you're listening and you want to meet us there. Hey, I'm not going to stop you. You can come and get a day pass at Muscleworks in Bethnal Green, and we can you can say hello and everything. So that's where we're going to be on Saturday at about
Steve,
11.
Just admit it. You just want to show off now that you're getting actually leaner again, and then you take off your shirt, take off the, I don't know, maybe even all of your clothing, and then you just pose in front of the mirror.
Did do that a couple of times last prep, so that may happen this time around. They need a posing room.
That's true. Actually, that's true. That is missing for sure.
Yeah, for sure at Muscleworks. Like that's a no-brainer for those guys. But you can actually train. You could probably train topless in there, and they wouldn't like kick up a fuss. Whereas like in the US, it's like I see like US people who I follow who are from the US like training topless in their gyms all the time. I'm like, there's no way I could do that here. Like, I mean, I'd get told off immediately.
I think perhaps you could do this in Germany. I don't know. I think German culture and German people are just not that type of person of just automatically assuming that this is all right and this is just what it is that you have to do. Because I think I saw it maybe once, and I was giving that person the stares because I was just like, what the hell is he doing, you know? Yeah. And I would very much assume that many, many people think that way.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a cultural thing.
Yeah, I did it once upstairs, and I made sure, like, this is just tells you everything. It was like a pull-up bar upstairs in Yorkies, and I made sure no one was around, and I took my top off for the set and then put it right back on, and I was like, I'm done.
Oh, all right. All right. Yeah. This is something that I did in the past as well, especially like last prep. Early in the morning, 6 in the morning, maybe 2 people around, facing the other direction on then a cardio machine, and I was at the other end of the gym. I take my shirt off, right? But immediately then, once I see the slightest movement in the mirror, I put the t-shirt back on.
Don't want to offend anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so funny. But yeah, in the US, they seem to be, it seems like they're more chilled about it. I don't know if it's like, because it's hotter there, and so it's like, maybe if the gym doesn't have aircon, then they're like, yeah, whatever, like, do this. But yeah, anyway, I think this time around,
are the females doing the same, or is it just like a male thing?
I don't follow those female accounts.
All right.
None of that. They're brainwashing me. Too much dopamine. I can't deal with it. Overload.
I mean, it's also much more lovely to watch some oiled up dudes, right?
Yeah, exactly. Way more muscle, then that's my thing. But I won't be looking particularly impressive until hopefully I look somewhat impressive now, but when I'm in the like mid 180s towards about 180 pounds, that's when I like hit peak aesthetics, where I'm like, I'm not like skinny, but shredded skinny, you know, that look that you end up kind of running because you're flat often and you're not peaked. And so you look a bit slim for like natural bodybuilding. But I'm not like I'll be full, but like I'll have muscle separation in around mid 180 pounds.
Steve, I think I know where this that you're coming from with this, right? But let me ask you a question, and I want you to answer that to the best of your abilities, as honestly as you can. Are you saying this because you really do believe this, or are you saying it because of it's just kind of the norm to say this and it's more ingrained in you, right? Because I think that you look impressive, and I think that the vast majority of listeners would agree with this. And I also think that you've heard it a lot of times over the past couple of months to years now, that you have made quite tremendous progress and that you look quite good. Or, and this is the second part of the question, are you so caught up in comparing yourself to the elites because this is what it is that you want to accomplish as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the way I frame my perspective on my physique is I think I default to like anti-arrogance, anti-confidence a lot of the time. Like I'm a fairly underconfident individual anyway, I would say, in a lot of things. And then I think I frame my reference in terms of the way I speak about my physique in part of who I'm comparing against, as in highly competitive bodybuilders, is where I want to be. So I frame my reference there. So, but when I objectively look at my physique and I'm like, yeah, I mean, versus the average guy, I look very, very good. Like I can recognize that for sure. And I'm very happy with what I've got right now. But it's funny, yeah, because I also think about it this way, where someone like, I don't know, they might say I'm like looking really good, I'm like really impressive, whatever. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm all right. And then I'm like, but that also discourages anyone who isn't quite as muscled as I am. Like that, then I don't know, it kind of shits on other people, right? Like if you're like, you're this, I don't know, you talk to Matt Ogus, you're like, oh, your physique is incredible, like you've got the best abs in the world. And he's like, nah, they're okay. And then you're like, whoa, dude, look at my abs. Like if yours are okay, mine are dog shit.
Yeah,
So
I totally also get why people act this way and behave this way. And whenever they receive a compliment, that they are maybe brushing it off even, you know. It is a cultural thing, probably. In some countries, it's more prevalent than in others. At the same time, also, of course, you want to appeal to a group and you don't really come across as arrogant, as you rightly stated so yourself. And it's, I think, more well received if you stay a little bit more humble. And I have the feeling that people expect this kind of response more so than you saying, no, absolutely, I look impressive. So I totally get where you're coming from. But I think, and this is also something where if we just take another example of like very beautiful females, for example, right, who get a lot of attention and all that kind of stuff. While yes, certainly there are some people probably who have a shit ton of body dysmorphia, who really have a skewed perception of the way that they look. I do believe that many people are aware of their looks and how they then are perceived by their greater audience and also their environment.
yeah, I think probably it's
and in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
right.
It's good to have some self-awareness, I think. But yeah, you probably see it with clients too, where sometimes like they don't quite believe it themselves. Like you're like, no, dude, you're like seriously jacked. You have loads of potential. And they're like, really? Do I? And they just need someone they trust to tell them. And then they believe it a bit.
I can also see when it's a little bit questionable still. When you are uncertain because you're right in the middle of like, okay, I know a lot of people who are much more impressive than I am. And I know a lot of people who are less impressive than I am when it comes to the looks. I know that there is then a little bit of a doubt there. But let's go back to kind of the person who is quite beautiful and gets the confirmation from lots of different places. And I think that especially beauty in our society is very much, from a psychological perspective, also confirmed in many different ways. Of like, most of the time people assume that you're more successful, for example. You are probably much more privileged, and this is not meant in a rude way where you haven't deserved it to some extent. In some instances you probably do, but when it comes to just like application for a job or so, you are prioritized when you look good in comparison to someone who looks shitty. That's just a matter of fact. We don't really need to downplay this. And when it comes to unquestionably that you are standing out with, for example, the physique or other talents or with your looks, I think that people are still afraid of just saying it out loudly and being like, yes, because of course most people want to be liked by the vast majority of people, and they don't really want to come across in the wrong way. But to get it back or pull it back to your instance, I think that you don't give yourself enough credit for the expertise that you have, the experience, of course, that comes along with the expertise, but also then the looks that you have. I think that you should be way more confident and also way more proud in what it is that you have.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's, I always think too, I don't know if you have any examples in your mind, but I have an example in my mind where me and Charlotte are watching this program called Married at First Sight. And this guy on there is called Al. And he is unbelievably confident, like in his looks, in his personality, in the shape that he's in. And I'm like, dude, like, you're not an ugly guy. Granted, like, you're all right. And like, you're in okay shape. Like, he's by no means jacked by any means. And it's like, he's a bit childish. His person, like, he's a funny guy, whatever. But I'm just like, dude, you need some humble pie, because you're coming, he just comes across so immature, and that he's like not met, he thinks he's a superhero basically.
Oh, 100%. Especially
I never
those
want to
formats.
come across like that. I'm just
especially
like...
those formats, right? Because Katie and I, we do watch those kind of trash TV formats as well. And sometimes you have those characters where we are just like baffled of how much confidence they have, and how much, especially males, are convinced that they are the alpha male, the shit, that every woman falls for them. And we're just like, they can't really believe that. And then we are always proven wrong, that it appears that they really do believe that themselves.
It's not until the woman comes to them and is like, yeah, no, our relationship is not going well.
Yeah,
I'm
but
not into
then
you.
in that
And
instance,
then they're like, what?
Yeah, exactly. Then they are coming up with some kind of excuses and some kind of accusations that she is in the wrong. She didn't really do the thing that then leads to a fruitful outcome and all that kind of stuff. He's never really the problem, right? And yeah, anyway.
It's scary when people can be that arrogant in themselves, where it's like, it's never their problem. It's always someone else. They're the superior person. I think some of us who are like not that way driven, we need a little bit of that. But yeah, I always see those extremes. I'm like, oh, it makes me so embarrassed to see that. I never want to be like that. Also, my frame of reference is like my journey. I have not been that hyper responder to the gym at all. So it's actually really novel to me now, having a physique where people like truly look up to it. And like, I'm actually like, yeah, actually, I look at myself and like I'm like a good, well-muscled natural bodybuilder. Like, I'm near probably my physical peak, and I have some impressive body parts. So I'm like, oh, it's actually really novel to be that way. I'm not used to it. I'm used to being a bit like so with my physique, a bit more average, put it that way.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's of course more of a complex field, because you can't just go out there and be that overconfident, be super arrogant, because this is also off-putting. And also then, has it been given to you by nature, or have you worked for it? I think that there's definitely also something to it as well. I'm more impressed with a person who didn't have the odds in their favor and really put in the work and effort over maybe decades, making things happen, than the person who was just given it to.
Yeah.
Such as also from a financial perspective, right? You were born into kind of a wealthy family. I don't want to downplay your ambitions, and that you are working maybe hard in certain fields and areas, but I think that the person who has really built a fortune for themselves, coming from nowhere, is, to me at least, most of the time much more impressive.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's no, I agree with that. I don't know where I'm going now, but yeah, it's an interesting discussion for sure. And I think it's that it's funny, average And I would say I'm like, I don't think I'm special. I still think I hold that kind of somewhat average, like genetics average in that regard.
Mm.
It's just I've given it way more average, way above average time and effort. And I think that's what's led to an above average look. And I don't want to be ignorant to my genetics. Maybe people really think that they're very, very good, but I'm not sure they are. Like, I don't think they're anything outstanding for sure. I think the average or maybe slightly above, maybe, but certainly my efforts and time doing it have been way above average. So I think that's what's led to more of it than genetics.
Have you read or heard or listened to the book from Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers?
Yes.
It is exactly
not for a
this.
long time.
Most of the time, it is time dependent, and also being in the right situation at the right time. And then doing things for long enough. So he had lots of different examples. And of course, you need to take a little bit of look at these things with a little bit of grain of salt, of course, because you could also make the argument that lots of these examples are cherry picking, and maybe even observational bias. But he got a point that the longer you've been doing things for, the more likely it is that you can be successful and can be an outlier in your field. And we see it time and time again, right? And couple this then with work ethics, with the right circumstances from also a financial perspective, right? Because some people do have the talent, but they are not living in an environment that is then supportive of their talents as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting. I think I remember I can't remember the specifics of it, but he gave the example, I think, of like Bill Gates and like how many things aligned for him and Microsoft, right? I'm getting that right. And it was just like, oh, wow, like there's a lot of things line up for him in that regard. So it's super interesting. And also the sports gene was interesting, where they gave the example of this, I think it was like a high jumper or whatever. And he'd high jumped, he'd worked so hard on his craft that his Achilles tendon was like ridiculously like hard and developed. And then this guy, I don't know, this other guy basically hadn't been doing it very long and beat him. And he'd like the amount of time and effort that they'd put in was like completely opposite, but he just had so much more talent. And it's like, I mean, it's a good example of when talent doesn't work hard, you can beat that person if you don't have as much talent, if you are willing to put in that work. And you could also argue work ethic and that sort of thing is somewhat genetic driven.
But 100%. I think this is more like an epigenetic thing. I mean, it doesn't really alter your gene pool or anything like, at least not that I would assume that it does. But maybe it does. I don't know. This is, of course, pure speculation and assumption. But I would assume that I was never really, when I was younger, the person who had a great work ethic. But now looking back, maybe there were already the foundational stones being set there in order to go down a certain route. Because I started earning my own money at the age of 12, like properly, This is, of course, then, I was kind of forced into it though. But I would never really say that I was someone who was super ambitious and that's why I went out. It wasn't because I had great work ethic. It was just out of necessity.
Were you selling sweets?
No. I was working in the restaurant of my parents, actually.
Oh,
like properly.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't just like he's so cute, he's helping out just a little bit, right? Let him. But like proper kitchen hours there. And now looking back, I think this isn't even legal if you really think about it. Right?
That's crazy.
And
family business though, right?
Yeah, and this is once again not because I had the ambitions or had the work ethic. I would even say that I was quite lazy back then, because I would have preferred to just sit at home, play some video games and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, we didn't really have a lot of money, and I wanted, especially during those days. Do you still remember the time when Dickies and all the Carhartt and all those kind of brands were quite popular?
They're still Carhartt.
They came back,
still fairly,
right?
And they're kind of trendy now.
I desperately wanted to have those kind of things, So my parents couldn't just give me the money, so I needed to go out there and earn it myself,
Yeah.
And that's what I did, because out of necessity for what it is that I wanted to do, because I didn't really feel great being an outsider when it comes to kind of brands. And I don't know whether it changed nowadays. But back then, at least in my environment, wearing kind of brand fashion was actually quite important to actually be part of a certain group, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, did you not have school uniform, or was that outside of school?
No.
Oh, no school uniform. Yeah, that's why I think
Germany,
school uniforms are good.
We don't have a school uniform. And to be honest, Steve, because Hugo, he very much likes dressing well, you know, and he is always impressed with school uniform. And I said, like, I would prefer if in Germany we had school uniform as well, because it kind of gets rid of that class hierarchical kind of thing, and seeing just by what they are wearing who has a little bit more money and who doesn't. And I just wanted to be part of things, and that's why I did go out of my way to purchase these very, very expensive things, which now looking back, I mean, I could have easily be a little bit more childish, and instead of spending the summertime and all that kind of stuff in a kitchen, in a restaurant, and just being out and playing a little bit more, and or spending that money for other things or saving it or whatever, you know. Yeah,
it's funny what you do as a child to like fit in with your surroundings, but it's 100%. Hard even with uniform. People like tweak it to be themselves, or they buy like a slightly different version of this or a certain shoe to go with it. Or like mobile phones, I bet that's a thing now. Like once one kid in the class has a mobile phone, now every kid is like, Mom, Dad, I need a mobile phone. And you're like, no. Yeah, it probably doesn't really get rid of everything, you know? Yeah, those things probably lie a little bit there. But at the same time, I think it probably makes things a little bit more uniform. Yeah. Pun intended. Yeah, it's interesting what we'll do to signal certain things, like our appearance. But it makes me think of, you talked about kind of the privilege of appearance. And I definitely don't think it's all just talent, in terms of you're not just born with how you look. You can take care of yourself. And I think that goes a long way. You could be an ugly motherfucker, but if you dress really well and you have a great haircut and like good skincare routine or whatever it is, you know, these things, they can elevate you. So 100%. For sure, you can definitely work in many arenas in life where, you might be born with this certain level, but you can elevate it for sure. You know the saying of like, you're not ugly, you're just poor. I've heard that, yeah. And there's definitely something to it, to be honest. Yeah. I really do believe that if you really take care of your outer appearance, a lot can change for you already. Whether you like it or not is not up for debate, because this is just how our society works. It favors the people who look successful and look well overall. Yeah. It's just a matter of fact. Once again, whether we like it or not, that's not up for debate. It is what it is. And I think that if you really do a lot for that, I think that you can actually get from someone who looks, like you said, as being an ugly motherfucker, to someone who looks pretty handsome, to be honest. Yeah. And we all know that person, like, I don't know, in a friendship group or something. Who? All right. I thought that you wanted to say something here. No. You were a model. You're definitely not an ugly motherfucker. So what was I going to say? Yeah, that person who maybe they're not the most attractive individual, but their person, like, they're just confident. They just like have the chat and whatever it is. And they somehow do really well on like the dating market or whatever it is. Like if you have chat, like that goes a long way. If you can just talk shit, like that goes so far. So yeah, it comes back to that top trumps. I always use that example of top trumps. Like everyone has their own card of like various characteristics. You'll rate high on some, less high on others. You just got to play with it as best you can. I think that's a good way of putting it, to be honest. Yeah. Let's take a short break and then figure out what it is that we want to talk about. Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We create the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we
we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger. So what I've been thinking, Steve, is because someone actually then brought up the question of whether we can talk a little bit more about being a parent and then handling things around training and all that kind of stuff. While I do know that you don't have any kind of kids, at least not to my knowledge.
As far as your knowledge.
Yeah. I would very much assume it is a little bit limited to what it is that you can provide. But the thing is, you have, of course, now years of experience of working with clients as well, and you can probably provide decent amount of knowledge surrounding that because you have seen things. You have seen how people then are in a situation like this, what needs to be then taken care of, what needs to be considered, and all that kind of stuff. And I don't even think that I have lots more to add than you. Instead of course, having kids at home, but I think my situation is still a little bit less the norm as to what a normal parent is going through.
Yeah, I guess I definitely have many clients because we end up working with people similar to ourselves often or a similar age. And so I've had many people who have taken them through their like first kid and then second kid or what have you, or they have older children, that sort of thing. So a good 20 to 30% of my clients must have children. I can't actually be sure, but certainly a lot of them do. So I can definitely talk to some of the things that we've done together to try and improve that. But yeah, I'd never speak to, I have this horrible tendency to compare kids to dogs, and it's because that's the closest thing I have to a child. But I realize they're incredibly different for many reasons. But yeah, we can definitely talk about it in terms of kind of I'll start with like some of the main things I recognize with my guys. So often sleep is something that takes a big knock, routine, that sort of thing. People just have to be way more flexible than they normally are used to being, and not stressing about the things they can't control. It comes to that stoic philosophy of like, hey, control the controllables. What you can't control, don't stress about. So in like regards to sleep, if your child's waking up in the middle of the night and you have to take care of them, that's fine. Like you have to do that. Don't stress more than you need to. Try and get as much sleep as you can. Have as good a sleep hygiene as you can. Wear your blue light blockers when you're changing their nappy. That's kind of half a joke. Like don't stress about that more than you need to. And then the same with things like nutrition. Set yourself up for success. You can't freeball it as often as you can because you don't have as much time to just like go downstairs and make a meal maybe or what have you. So plan ahead, maybe do some meal prep or some people like meal prep companies. They're widely available now. Find easy solutions to win so that you're not having to rely upon that freedom and flexibility you used to have to make your food. And then same with training is like, hey, if you miss a session because like, I don't know, you had to pick your son or daughter up from school because they were sick, like it's not the end of the world. It's just realizing maybe your results won't be quite as quote unquote optimal or best practice as they previously were, but they can be so close to that with some minor deviances as long as you plan for it and don't stress about the things that you don't need to worry about stressing about. That's kind of where I see most wins for clients.
Are you sure that you don't have any kind of kids, Steve? No, because
Maybe.
A small Steve Holes with massive arms walking around the world. No, but because that was very, very well put. And I don't really have that much to add, to be honest. And we can, of course, go a little bit more in depth about certain things that you've talked about there. Because I think that if we were to dissect it, the major theme is be a little bit more flexible, as you rightly put so. You can't be as just selfish as you were in the past. Most of the time, this doesn't really work because if that wasn't really what you and your wife or you and your partner rather signed up for, that the other person is fully taking care of everything, then you have a responsibility as well. And you can't just leave your partner to it. Whether you are now the female or whether you are the male, doesn't really matter, you know? And that's why you have to be a little bit more flexible. And in that flexibility, you have to be probably a little bit more simplistic with certain things, such as nutrition. Doesn't really have to be like a proper meal. If yes, then do something like meal planning when you really have the time. When you have a baby at home, right, then do the meal prep whenever it is that you have time for it. So maybe when it's sleeping midday, or maybe at the end of the day, even if that is a little bit of additional workload for you, right? If it's important to you, then you get it done. If you don't really want to do kind of proper meals, then you stick with more simplistic things. Then you buy something like, I don't know, cottage cheese in a normal kind of package, with, I don't know, a carrot and maybe a slice of bread. Doesn't really sound like the most
sounds so German.
Yeah, it sounds so Pascal, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't really sound super appealing for the vast majority of people, but it gets the job done. It provides you with plenty of protein coming from a good protein source, provides you with carbohydrates. Hopefully that keeps you satiated for a little bit longer, and then you have a little bit of vegetables alongside with it as well. Buying this, putting it in your fridge, and then taking it out of the fridge and then eating. So if we just take the eating portion away, it is a matter of like a couple of minutes. Doesn't really require a lot of time, because this is the biggest complaint of people is kind of sleep, and also then I don't have the time for it. But I think that the expectations and what they think that they have to do doesn't match reality of what can be done. You don't, once again, have to sit down in the kitchen and each and every single meal that you're doing, need to cook it for kind of half an hour or so, because if you don't have the time for it, you need to be a little bit more creative. You need to make it happen to some other extent. And when it comes to sleep, another thing that I think is a big issue is that people don't really change with their new environment. That means now you have a small kid. When is it that the kid is sleeping? Most of the time throughout the day, depending on the age. But once they are getting to the age of like 1 to 5, 6, 7-ish, they're most of the time going to bed at a reasonable time. So for us at home, they are always going to bed at 7 p.m. So we are preparing everything at 6 p.m., right? Brushing teeth, washing, and all the kind of stuff, reading. And then at 7 p.m., lights are off. And then they are most of the time sleeping longer than you, but you probably can't sleep in up until 10 or so. You have to come to terms that probably it can be that they are getting or coming awake at 5 to 7 a.m. in the morning. And if you don't adjust to that new environment and match your sleeping hours somewhat with your kids' sleeping hours, then you're up for trouble. And sometimes it doesn't really work because you have other obligations. You come home late at 10, for example, because of work-related stuff. And normally you would like to sleep in a little bit more, but this is then where you have to then communicate things with your partner, in my opinion, if that's the case. If that's not the case, if you are at home at a reasonable time, you bring your kids to bed as well, then you need, in my opinion, you need to adjust your sleeping schedule alongside your kids so that you get proper sleep in. And if you don't, then sorry, you can't complain about a lack of sleep. And of course, you can always wake up in the middle of the night because something happens. This is just normal, right? But you're also going to the toilet probably once per night. Once per night. And if it's then not going to the toilet, but because your kid is crying in sleep or so, right, and you have to get up, I hope that only stays for like a couple of minutes and then you can fall back to sleep. It shouldn't really be a major interruption if you then have still like 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep per night. It was lots of talking now, Steve. Do you have anything to say in that regard?
Yeah, I really like that. It comes back to that being flexible, but also being willing to shift your current way of doing things. And I really like the idea of, you kind of talked about, you could be very selfish before, but now you have to not be. You have to now take consideration of other people to a large extent. And also,
in our opinion, I mean, some people see it the other way, right? That they want to still have a huge amount of selfishness of like, sure, I want to go on holiday by myself. I need free time. I don't get it, sorry. If that's you, totally fine. But I never understood why parents need holiday or a break from their family. In my opinion, if you made that decision, you maybe married the wife of your dreams, you got some kids together. I think this should tell you everything, in my opinion, that you want to be around those. Of course, sometimes things happen, but once again, if you go down that direction, it should be well thought through, and then you have those other obligations. You have to take responsibility.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it wasn't really thought through. And once again, nuances can always happen. There are situations where it wasn't planned and all that kind of stuff, but generally, we are talking about general situations.
Yeah, for sure. And you also mentioned communication, which I think is key with your partner. So communicating ways where you can help one another out to make it more comfortable for you both, rather than, I don't know, bashing heads because you're both trying to do the same things, where it's like, hey, you could take a bit of a knock to your freedom and flexibility here. I can take a bit of a knock here, wherever it might be. Like you mentioned, sleeping hours. I think that's great. The other thing I think that would be really good to be flexible and think about is you can't approach your training maybe in the same way. You can't be as, we like auto regulation and like taking the person where they're at and adjusting things to their environment, whether or not that's male, female, dieting, massing, have children or not. And so you just have to take that into consideration. So if now your recovery reserves are going to be less because you have other demands, then you know you're not going to be able to probably do as much volume, be as progressive. And so you might reduce your training frequency potentially, or reduce your training volume, and then also just recognize you might more often repeat performance versus beating performance. And it might also not be the time to diet, because that's another additional stress on top when you're just having children. I'm not saying whenever you have children you can't diet, because that'd be pretty awful for a lot of bodybuilders or people who want to lose body fat at some point. But I think those measures can come into consideration too. And it's just recognizing it's going to be a big change. A lot of us, me included, don't like change. It's going to be uncomfortable initially, but you'll find your feet, I think, eventually. And it's just trying to, not stress over the situation more than you have to, and be flexible and realize you're not losing everything in a short period of time. You can still make small gains at various times.
100%. And in addition to that, so of course, lots of things change to the better, but also to the worse. And for me personally, though, and once again, everything that I'm saying is always kind of my personal opinion. So if you disagree with me, you had other experiences while becoming maybe a dad or a mom, that's totally fine, right? I'm speaking from my experience and my observations. But there are certain situations where you're then most often you're sick, for example. I even said to Steve that there were just this weekend alone certain interruptions once again that were unforeseeable, and you need to then adjust. That doesn't mean, though, that you have completely disregard the person that has that you were before the baby came into your life, or maybe certain couple of babies came into your life. But you need to make some alterations. You can't live your life anymore the way that you did prior to the baby. I mean, you can, but once again, my personal opinion is your life changed. You gave life to, you gave life to a baby, and it's something that you now need to take care of. And this is why you can't just continue living your life the way that you did before. And before I had family, of course, I could get up whenever I wanted to. I could go to the gym whenever I wanted to, right? If I wanted to take a break from things, I could do this. I could go on holiday whenever I wanted to, right? Basically, you are just living for yourself. With a kid, you're not just living for the kid, but you're also kind of living for your partner as well, because you need to take into consideration their time and their decisions as well. You can't just like take and expect that every decision that you're doing, the other person needs to just accept. You need to communicate, of course. So just as an example, and I brought it up the last week, Katie is always going to volleyball training twice per week. And this is then where I bring the kids to bed as well, and because of this, I also try my very best to not put any kind of schedules, any kind of traveling around those dates, because I know it's important for her that she also then can participate and pursue the things that she wants to. And when it comes then to also the sicknesses and those unpredictable events, it's just what it is. And sometimes you then may go into a training session 2 hours later than you usually do. or you need to take a rest day that was unplanned, or you need to accept that you are now much, much more tired going into that one session. The thing is, though, that if you really zoom out, how long does it last for? Those things. It's a very, very temporary amount of time. The first year, it's a baby. It really needs you. The first months, though, the first weeks, the baby is basically just sleeping, right? And depending on where it is that you are living, so in Germany, the parents can take some time off work for a pretty long period of time. Whereas, for example, in France, I think that you can only do it for 1 month, and then you're already obliged to go back to work. Here in Germany, you can take up to 14 months of being away from work, paid, right? So
is that paternity leave as well?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And you can do it per parent. I can't really recall, but you can actually then take the time from the other parent if he or she doesn't really take time off, and put it on you, basically. And this is what we did. So Katie was at home for like 14 months. And what is it that I want to say? Oh yeah, during that time frame, the baby is just developing and evolving. Yeah, you want to be there as well. You want to, of course, see things, but there's a lot of time where the baby's just sleeping and not doing anything at all, and during that time, you can then easily go out 1 or 2 hours, and maybe then cut the workouts also a little bit shorter, compress them, supersetting, antagonistic supersets, and all that kind of stuff. Compress the time that you're then spending in the gym. And once again, always keep in mind that this is just temporary. Once they are then at an age of like going to the crib, for example, or going to school, their time is nearly over. They still need you a little bit more, but they are basically getting more and more autonomous. And at some point, 10, 11, they are starting to be quite independent. They can already spend some time at home by themselves without you watching over them and all that kind of stuff, And if you really think about it, it's kind of a couple of years where you then may need to then alter things, be a little bit more flexible. But also speaking from my personal experience, I didn't need to make major adjustments to my training and nutrition. I was still able to cut even when Tony was born, right? Because I was walking around with him around my chest, using him as a weighted vest, for example, And
progressive overload.
Exactly. I still was able to train 6 days per week and all that kind of stuff, And of course, around the birth of your child, you can then take a deload, maybe take a primer phase where you're then reducing the frequency. But this is not how you will train, or what training and nutrition will look like for now the next 10 years, and you are restricted with everything.
Yeah.
It just needs a little bit of alterations. And I think that this is something that you would do anyway to begin with everything in life. If there's a new challenge, if the circumstances require you to make some changes, what is it that you would do? Stop? Even though that you could be doing this if you just make the right decisions and right adjustments. And it's kind of just, if we just take the word baby or kid away, it is what it is. It just needs some new modifications and adjustments because something in your life has changed. That's all.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. The only thing I'd add is I'm abundantly aware, and hopefully it's very obvious to the viewers, we're talking from a male perspective. A female perspective, much different, because you're going and giving birth and there's, breastfeeding, that sort of thing. The mum you were talking about privilege earlier. This is our male privilege in regards to bringing children into the world. It just takes a lot less from us.
I did breastfeed as well.
Did you have fakey?
Do you know that scene from Family Guy where he's just like trying to give?
I think I might have seen it. Yeah.
That was me.
Oh, dear. Yeah. So, and I actually haven't. I think that's a specific set of skills and a speciality to work with women through pregnancy and then post-pregnancy, like postpartum and all of that. And that's not something either of us have spent much time in looking into and investigating and educating ourselves on. So
yeah,
I'd look for other resources for this.
Also there, I would then say if you're saying it's a male privilege, I could also then spin it around, because I think it's a huge privilege of knowing that the child, so first and foremost, feeling it, having that connection is something that males will never understand. Never. And I would have
maybe they will.
it. Maybe in the future, yeah, that's true.
We won't.
I think because I love being a dad, I would have loved to have that special bond and connection as women, as mothers have with their kids, because feeling it move inside of you, knowing that you have made him grow for like him or her grow for like 9 months, right? And then also breastfeeding. Katie said like this is some kind of special connection, and whenever she even thought about it, sorry for the details, she was already leaking and all that kind of stuff, that special connection, feeding your kid, right, making him stay kind of alive, is something that is very, very special. And I think it's so much worth the trade-off of not them being able to train that you would like to, or eat the way that you would like to, for a temporary amount of time, like, honestly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could say something that may then offend a lot of people, and that is why I'm not doing it. But if you don't see this as a privilege and as a lovely thing, the trade-off, man, I think something is really off.
Or, yeah, I mean, children aren't for you in that case, I guess.
Oh, yeah, something like this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I know, yeah, I get that perspective as well. Although it freaks the shit out of me to think about having something in me growing, and like that kind of freaks me out as well. But I can only imagine what that is like for a woman. And yeah, it's a privilege that they basically don't need us in a sense, and they can bring a child into the world, whereas we can't do that currently. So there's pros and cons on either side of the coin, and wherever you land on the spectrum of gender.
One thing that I want to say is I think that many people may then be too afraid about the upcoming challenges, because you may be anxious about something that you have never experienced in the past. If it's your first kid, you don't really know what is about to happen. And I think that if you're then reading on the internet about kind of recommendations, suggestions, those are all kind of just loose general recommendations. And I think nothing really makes you prepare for this than just going through it yourself, just taking it as it comes. And I think that in itself, you will survive and you will adapt. This is just what humans always do. You take it as it comes. And yes, certainly there will be days where it's a little bit more challenging than other days. But then you wake up in the morning and then you live another day, And I don't really think that it's necessary to over complicate things, to overly stress about certain things. Like you said, Steve, control the things that you can control to the best of your abilities. And if you then need to make some modifications, so be it. I mean, stressing about it too much doesn't really help you in any kind of way. And it doesn't really prepare you any more than not stressing about it.
Yeah, I think that's so well said, not just for having children, but so many things in life. I think we tend to attract often that slightly more neurotic overthinker type of client. And so the things you were just saying there is things I see within clients where they really try and like leave no stone unturned. But by doing so, it's like they fatigue themselves so much that they'd be better off leaving some of those stones where they were and not stressing about them so much.
I think that in that kind of instance, sometimes ignorance is a really blessing. Not just sometimes, but a lot of times. The less you know, the better it sometimes is. So that you're just being thrown into the water and then you're just trying to swim. Instead of reading on the internet, like, how do I actually swim? All right, I've now read it, but I've never been in water. So what does it actually feel like? What does it look like? If I'm out there, what am I supposed to be doing, right? It's kind of like the same with skiing, for example. When I needed to make the transition over to skiing from snowboarding, of course, the day before, I read on the internet of what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. But I never wore any kind of skis. I never stood on skis before. So I had no idea what it feels like. And what I'm supposed to be doing, right? I can read it, but going through it is something completely different. So just go in there and ski with your baby.
What's the quote we often come back to is experience cures anxiety.
Exactly.
There's nothing quite like just doing the damn thing,
Yeah.
getting stuck in. But obviously, like you mentioned several times, like setting yourself up for success in regards to thinking it through and planning it if you can. That would probably be ideal, because that would be a lot more stressful if it was just out of the blue.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, for many reasons, financially,
Yeah.
like relationships, environment.
Next
like
morning,
everything.
here's the baby.
Yeah, not ideal.
Yeah, exactly. But this brings up another good point, Steve. You have basically 9 months, theoretically speaking, to prepare for it.
Sure.
Right. And it's not like, oh shit, the 9 months is over. You are starting to mentally prepare for it, or already the way that you also treat your partner as well. Things just automatically change. You are then preparing things at home. You get more and more into that mentality of becoming a parent as well. This is also why, I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole, because I have the feeling that especially one of those generations who are now talking a lot about female empowerment and not wanting kids because this is my life and all that kind of stuff. It's a nuanced discussion that I don't really want to open up that can of worms, but also there, it's kind of like, I think you forget about, or you can't even judge something that you've never done before. And of course, it sounds scary, and there are lots of scary things, and of course, a lot of shitty things as well, of being constantly sick
Literally.
and all that kind of, yeah, literally as well, right? But at the same time, it's such a lovely thing that you can only relate to once you've gone through it. I don't really think that there are lots of things in life where I can wholeheartedly say it, because with certain things you can actually, if you are great with empathy, you can probably also have a fairly good understanding of how the other person may then feel. If you're kind of a psychotherapist, for example, who has years of experience, you don't need to be depressed yourself in order then to help people, because you have that fundamental knowledge. But this is one of those things where I'm just like saying, that bond and connection you are most likely building with your kid is something that I don't really think that you can relate to, because it's not seeing the kid of your friend now being there. Most of the time, kids of other people are freaking annoying, and you don't really find them cute. It's just that. Most of the time, that's just that. You see them, you find them annoying, they are loud, they are smelly, they don't really take or are respectful, and all that kind of stuff. Kids of strangers or people that you may even still know, it's not the same. Right? And basing that criteria off of this experience is just, in my opinion, foolish. Your kid will always be kind of the most precious thing for most of the time. Of course, there are parents where this is not the case, but most of the time, the most precious good to you. And it's special, you know? And this is also how some parents, of course, treat their kids as well.
Yeah. No, I can totally see that. Only, again, I'm going to do a bad job here of relating dogs to kids, but I think of the bond I have with Ada, and I'm like, I can only imagine it's 10 times more intense with a child. That would be crazy, because like I can only imagine what it would be like.
Yeah.
So I can see how that's super special.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think we've done a good job of chatting about that. Hopefully,
yeah,
some useful points, especially from your end.
Yeah, I really do hope that people are able to take something away from it. It's not scary, right? And you are making, I mean, just thinking about that you're giving life to something is just crazy enough. It's kind of, it sounds so weird, but it is kind of like a miracle that you are then able to then see and follow. And man, then let the training and nutrition take a little bit of a backseat if it needs to. It doesn't have to if you have the capacity for it. But if it needs to, then let it be it. Right? Your life on Earth is also limited, and training and nutrition shouldn't really dictate everything. Yeah, that's the way that I see things.
bodybuilding should complement your lifestyle, not take over. That's something we always come back to. So I think that's very well said. Shall I close it out here?
Yeah.
Guys, thank you for listening. I think I need another word because that worked really well where people comment a lot. They have to comment baby now.
A baby,
That's what I want.
But it doesn't really work if we're not really replying, does it?
Well, we will eventually reply. I don't know. Maybe it does work. I'm not even sure how the algorithm works, but I like seeing the comments. I liked how many people were writing the word. It made me feel good. So just for that reason alone, make us feel good, right, baby, or at least me. And if you aren't yet, subscribe and like it and like the damn video, of course. I think that's like an Omar Isuf saying. And we'll catch you next time. Baby.
Cheers, guys. Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality and we know how to do it. And we will help you achieve this. The Minicut Movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut Movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.